Grab your morning brew because what I'm about to tell you will wake you up faster than a triple espresso shot. Picture this: London's knife crime has shot up by 58% in just 3 years, and now there's a heavyweight political showdown brewing that could change everything. We're talking emergency powers, zero-tolerance policies, and a report so scathing it makes Gordon Ramsay look diplomatic. This isn't just another political squabble over tea and biscuits, this is about whether our capital city can actually be made safe again. Welcome back to UK Daily Coffee, where we serve up the political drama hotter than your morning cuppa. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a story that's got Westminster buzzing louder than a broken fire alarm. Yvette Cooper, our Home Secretary, is being told to essentially put Sadiq Khan in political detention. And trust me, this isn't your typical playground spat, this is serious business with serious consequences. So what's got everyone's knickers in such a twist? Well, policy exchange, that's what. This think tank has just dropped a report that reads like a horror novel set in modern London. They're essentially saying that our beloved mayor has fumbled the ball so spectacularly on knife crime that it's time for the government to step in like a stern head teacher taking over from a supply teacher who's lost complete control of the classroom. The numbers are absolutely staggering, and I mean that in the worst possible way. We're looking at a 58% increase in knife crime between 2021 and 2024. That's not a gentle uptick, that's a rocket ship pointed in entirely the wrong direction. To put this in perspective, if knife crime were a cryptocurrency, investors would be absolutely ecstatic. Unfortunately, we're dealing with real lives and real violence on London streets. But here's where it gets really juicy. Policy exchange isn't just pointing fingers and tutting disapprovingly like your nan watching Love Island. They're demanding that Yvette Cooper dust off Section 40 of the Police Act 1996. Now, unless you're a legal eagle or have an unhealthy obsession with obscure government legislation, you probably don't know what that means. Basically, it's the political equivalent of calling in the big guns, emergency powers that let the Home Secretary tell a mayor exactly what to do and how to do it. Think of it as the constitutional version of your mum stepping in when you and your sibling can't sort out who gets the last slice of pizza. Except instead of pizza, we're talking about knife crime hotspots, and instead of siblings, we've got politicians who are supposed to be working together but apparently can't agree on how to stop people from stabbing each other in broad daylight. The report's recommendations read like a greatest hits album of tough-on-crime policies. They want police flooding knife crime hotspots like bargain hunters descending on Black Friday sales. They're calling for a joint statement from Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, Sadiq Khan, and Met Police Commissioner Mark Rowley that would essentially give police officers the green light to dramatically ramp up stop and search operations. Now, stop and search is about as controversial as pineapple on pizza, but Policy Exchange reckons it's time to throw political correctness out the window faster than you'd toss a moldy sandwich. They want a zero-tolerance approach that sends a clear message to criminals: London isn't your personal playground anymore. But wait, there's more. Because apparently, catching criminals isn't enough if you're just going to let them walk free faster than a tourist escaping a London taxi fare. The report reveals some absolutely mind-boggling statistics about repeat offenders that'll make your blood boil more than a kettle left on too long. Get this, they've identified over 8,000 hyper-prolific offenders who already had 46 or more previous convictions or cautions. These aren't first-time mistake makers, these are people who've essentially made criminal activity their full-time career. And here's the kicker, only 44% of them were actually jailed after being convicted of another serious offense last year. That means more than half of these career criminals were essentially given a slap on the wrist and sent on their merry way to offend again. It's like playing a game where the house always wins, except the house is run by criminals and the game is terrorizing innocent Londoners. Policy Exchange is basically saying we need to change the rules of this game dramatically, and they want mandatory 3-year prison sentences for anyone convicted of robbery. The report also highlights something that should make every law-abiding citizen's skin crawl: criminals are arming themselves with knives because they genuinely don't fear getting caught. It's not that they're particularly brave, they've just done the math and realized that the odds are massively in their favor. When your justice system is more lenient than a substitute teacher who's given up on discipline, you create an environment where crime literally pays. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has jumped on this report like a political opportunist spots a photo opportunity. He's calling it excellent and sobering, which in political speak translates to "I told you so" with a side of "we need to fix this immediately." Philp's backing the zero-tolerance approach and basically arguing that we need to stop treating knife-carrying thugs like misunderstood teenagers who just need a good talking to. The recommendations get even more specific and, frankly, more dramatic. Policy Exchange wants quarterly knife crime summits in Downing Street, because apparently, our politicians need to be forced to pay attention to this crisis with the same regularity as quarterly business reviews. They're also calling for live facial recognition technology to quickly identify wanted violent criminals, which sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi thriller but is apparently what it takes to keep London safe in 2025. Former Metropolitan Police Detective David Spencer has weighed in with some particularly harsh criticism that cuts deeper than a knife crime statistic. He's basically saying that London is in the grip of a crime wave while police chiefs have been playing politics instead of, actually policing. According to Spencer, political leaders have sacrificed effective law enforcement on the altar of ideological preferences, which is a fancy way of saying they've prioritized looking progressive over actually protecting people. Spencer's numbers paint a picture grimmer than a British winter. Knife crime in England and Wales has risen by 78% since 2013 to 14, with over 50,000 offences recorded in 2023 to 24. Even accounting for population growth, we're looking at a 68% increase over the last decade. London, despite having only 15% of England's population, accounts for 32% of all knife crime and nearly 46% of knife-point robberies. Let that sink in for a moment. London is punching way above its weight in all the wrong categories. It's like being the overachiever in a class where nobody wants to excel. The report reveals what might be the most infuriating statistic of all: of the over 16,000 super-prolific offenders with between 26 and 45 previous convictions, only 42% were sentenced to immediate imprisonment after their latest conviction. That means nearly 10,000 career criminals walked free after proving, beyond any reasonable doubt, that they have absolutely no intention of becoming productive members of society. Former Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner Peter Clark didn't mince words either, describing the situation as shameful and arguing that criminals have been able to persecute the public with near impunity. He's pointing out that while the government talks about reducing short sentences and prison recalls, the reality is that persistent violent criminals know they can operate with minimal fear of meaningful consequences. This creates a perfect storm where criminals understand the system better than the people trying to reform it. They've essentially figured out how to game a justice system that seems more concerned with rehabilitation theory than public safety reality. But here's where the political theatre gets really interesting. We've got a Labour Home Secretary being asked to use emergency powers against a Labour Mayor of London. It's like watching a family argument play out on the national stage, except the stakes are measured in hospital admissions and funeral costs rather than hurt feelings and awkward Christmas dinners. Sadiq Khan finds himself in the political equivalent of being called to the headmaster's office, except the headmaster has the power to essentially override his authority and tell him exactly how to run London's policing. This isn't just embarrassing, it's potentially career-defining. If Cooper actually uses these emergency powers, it would be an unprecedented admission that the Mayor of London has failed so spectacularly at one of his most basic responsibilities that central government intervention is necessary. The zero-tolerance approach being advocated represents a fundamental shift from the community policing and rehabilitation-focused strategies that have dominated recent policy discussions. We're talking about flooding streets with officers, dramatically increasing stop and search operations, implementing live facial recognition technology, and essentially telling criminals that the days of lenient treatment are over. This isn't just about catching more criminals, it's about fundamentally changing the risk-reward calculation that currently makes knife crime seem like a rational career choice for too many young people. When you know that even multiple convictions are unlikely to result in meaningful prison time, carrying a knife becomes a low-risk, high-reward proposition. Policy Exchange is arguing that we need to flip that equation entirely. The tech angle is particularly interesting, with calls for Apple and Google to prevent stolen devices from connecting to cloud services. This recognizes that modern street crime isn't just about violence, it's about a sophisticated ecosystem where stolen phones can be quickly monetized through online platforms. By cutting off these digital escape routes, the thinking goes, you make theft significantly less profitable and therefore less attractive. The quarterly Downing Street Summit's recommendation is particularly telling because it suggests that this crisis requires ongoing, high-level political attention rather than occasional policy announcements. It's acknowledging that knife crime has become such a persistent problem that it needs to be treated with the same urgency as economic crises or national security threats. What makes this entire situation even more complex is the timing. We're in an era where police-community relations are under constant scrutiny, stop and search policies are heavily debated, and prison overcrowding is a genuine concern. Policy exchange is essentially arguing that all of these considerations need to take a back seat to the immediate priority of making London's streets safe again. The political implications are massive. If Cooper does invoke Section 40, it would be an unprecedented federal intervention in London's governance that could reshape the relationship between national government and devolved authorities. If she doesn't, she risks being seen as weak on crime while London's knife crime statistics continue their upward trajectory. For Sadiq Khan, this represents an existential political threat. Being subject to emergency government intervention would be a political scarlet letter that would follow him for the rest of his career. It would essentially be an official government acknowledgement that he's failed at one of a mayor's most fundamental responsibilities. The broader implications extend beyond London politics. This could set a precedent for how central government deals with local authorities that are perceived to be failing on critical public safety issues. We could be looking at a fundamental shift in the balance of power between national and local government. So what happens next? Well, all eyes are on Yvette Cooper. She's got a political hot potato that's getting hotter by the day, with pressure mounting from think tanks, opposition politicians, and presumably terrified Londoners who just want to feel safe walking their own streets. The clock is ticking, the pressure is mounting, and London's knife crime statistics aren't waiting for political consensus. Whether we see unprecedented government intervention or continued political finger-pointing, one thing is certain, the status quo isn't working, and something has to give. That's all for today's UK Daily Coffee. If this story has got your political caffeine levels buzzing, make sure you hit that subscribe button because trust me, this is just the beginning of what promises to be a fascinating and potentially explosive political showdown. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any updates on this developing story, and let me know in the comments what you think Cooper should do. Should she invoke those emergency powers, or is there another way to tackle London's knife crime crisis? I'll be back with more political drama faster than you can say stop and search, so until next time, keep your coffee strong and your political awareness stronger.